everybody, and welcome to another Agile IT Tech Talk. I'm your host, Sean Spicer, joined today by Miguel Escalante, our Senior Cloud Engineer here at Agile IT. Today we're going to be going over Windows Virtual Desktop. So it's been a heck of a week a heck of 2 weeks for Microsoft. So last week they launched Azure Sentinel into general availability.
Right.
As of this Monday, September 30th, Windows Virtual Desktop went into general availability. And then yesterday at the Surface event, they announced the new Surface Neo, this foldable phone running an Intel processor with Android.
Surface Pro X.
The Surface Pro X as well, but the Neo. Microsoft is making another phone. This crazy week. But we've been working with Windows Virtual Desktop since what, March, Miguel?
Well,
February?
Well, the new flavor of it, yes.
Yeah.
Before this is the next evolution of remote. We could call it the next evolution of remote desktop services. Microsoft's have been having this challenge since Azure came to be. Is a lot of companies use virtual desktop as a means of controlling compliance and applications and all that good stuff, right? So they develop an image, they publish it, they have users use a peripheral device like a thin client to connect to it and then do their work. Everything's there. They can work remotely. Life is good. This has been a challenge for them since they've released remote desktop services. And they've wanted to put this out there since 2012, but I think they finally hit the nail on the head. The experience, the deployment experience, everything is just so cohesive and so user-friendly that I think it's finally going to probably take off.
Yeah, when we initially tried it out here, when it was still just in public preview, Conrad set me up with it. And one of the things I like is that I have my own device at home that I don't want to install the apps on. I have my own Office 365 tenant. I don't like to mix things up, particularly since I have my own patents and IP and stuff. So I use the web apps all the time. And they're really PowerPoint. The web app does not compare to PowerPoint, the desktop version. But now with Windows Virtual Desktop, I can log in with that. And we'll go into some of these business cases in a minute, but I get the full desktop experience without actually, I don't want to say compromising my device, but without giving up that control that we would need to maintain security.
And then the cool thing is, like, let's assume you have an emergency at the office. You don't travel with your laptop everywhere. Well, at least like I do, or at least we have Surfaces here that basically take everywhere, right? But not everybody does. But most people now, actually, you see a lot of people carry their iPad mini around or their iPad around, which is very, it's very portable. You can have it in your car, whatever. An emergency pops up, pull over to the side of the road, set that to your phone. You can actually access Windows resources from an iPad.
And that's what's going to be really cool is in these demos today, we're going to go through setting this up. We're going to go through what the desktop experience looks like from a thin client, so Windows 10 or a Surface running Windows 10 in S mode, as well as an iPad. So you'll get to see what that mobile experience is like. The other neat thing is that this is the only multi-session Windows 10 experience. Let's get into the business cases for this and we can talk about it. So security and regulation, we've already talked about how there's kind of that containerized segmentation around the virtual desktop, which is really important for banks, hospitals, and particularly with our GCC clients. Now, the other thing is it's scalable, and that's where we get into that being multi-users. So you can scale this to be incredibly powerful. So let's say you have 5 of them, and the first 5 users each get a machine, or you have 5 of them, and the first 5 users log into the first, the next 5 log into the second. And that comes down to whether you're working with a marketing department that needs to run Adobe Creative Suite, or you're working with a call center where they're just running some sort of SaaS CRM.
Or they're running Chrome, which we found that is not the most efficient in RDS.
Really?
Yeah, if you're running RDS or Windows Virtual Desktop, don't use Chrome tabbed. Each tab does not close.
Right.
So it keeps adding more resource consumption. So you all of a sudden have these sessions that are like, well, the server was designed to handle like 15 people and there's 3 of them and it's crashing. Well, Chrome's probably the culprit. There's other browsers out there for now. That's just a little negative information I'm passing along to our audience here.
I don't know if you've tried it. Have you experienced that with the new Edge that's built on Chromium?
I have not, but the cool thing, so the intricate part about this is that Chrome on mobile devices, if you're not using the tab, it shuts down the process and it retakes it back up when you will reopen up the tab.
Mm-hmm.
It is not that way in Windows. They actually are all active. That's why every tab you open keeps adding resources to your session. Anyway, another thing I'd like to point out here, Sean, is that in addition to these benefits, you also get a super fast deployment of a new onboarding of a new user. You can have thin devices that are not expensive, laying around. You can actually even run this off of a Pi for remote desktop session.
Oh, yeah.
So you have devices that are sub $100 that you can just add peripherals to, connect up, and you're good to go. You're working. These devices, if they break down, who cares?
Yeah,
you don't have to spend time installing applications, joining them to Active Directory, putting all these things on them. Because if you think about it, a custom desktop deployment on average is about 4 to 6 hours technician time to deploy.
Mm-hmm.
Between unboxing, waiting for the out-of-box experience to go through, installing the applications as they just have Office and 3 more apps, which is the common scenario now, and then joining it to a domain, making sure that the user can log in, making sure the files are there, OneDrive. You're talking about a 4 to 6 hour process. 4 to 6 hour process can be a little bit expensive. I'm not saying totally expensive, but you're talking about another $1,000. This is $100.
Yep. And I mean, if anybody on the watching the video or on the call right now isn't aware, Raspberry Pi is a single board computer that's about the size of an old cassette tape case, and you can get them for $35. So
there are some limitations though. You're not going to do 4K video, but it's just like an example. You have a remote worker coming online. They need a device, or you're going to provide them with a device. You send them that. You send them a keyboard, a mouse. They have a monitor. They hook all that up. They're good to go.
Now, talking about that 4K video, and we'll probably mention this a little bit as we go through the setup demo, is that you can actually set up, 64 cores, 1 terabyte of RAM, and up to 10 NVIDIA T100 GPUs.
Yeah, that'll cost you a penny though.
Oh yeah, but if you want to be able to run Premiere and edit 4K video, or edit your tech talks or your conference video from a Surface Pro 4, it'll do it. But yes, it's going to cost you.
Well, it's going to cost you. And then also have in mind the other 2 factors there, right? First factor is also bandwidth. You can have the best machine out there. If your bandwidth does not keep up with what you're doing, your experience will not be ideal.
Right.
So that's a very important factor to consider. Now, the other thing here is that they did optimization for streaming, right? Mm-hmm. They're using UDP versus TCP for when you're doing streaming content. That's why you can actually watch a YouTube video. We don't encourage you to do so, but you could. You can watch a 4K YouTube video, and it'll seem pretty seamless. You can actually say, wow, this sort of looks like I'm running it on my desktop. You won't be. But again, there's all these things that came into play with technologies that have been released over the years that they decided to just combine them into this very well put together package that consumers are jumping into pretty quickly. Well, because of the reasons we described and a lot more.
And so now you guys know how we test our services here as we watch YouTube videos. Another thing is if you don't want to even pay for the device. Now, for years, people have been bringing their smartphones to work with BYOD. But if you want somebody to use their own laptop or desktop, particularly remote employees, you can set up a desktop for them. So that's this BYOD and branch workers.
Yeah, well, this is now the other thing here. I keep sort of stopping you there.
I know.
There's caveats on all these, right? And I want to at least make people aware of what they're buying. Voice over IP still has not been fully vetted on this solution yet.
Okay.
So if you're using Teams calling, you may want to consider this. You may want to consider a different path to achieving that. Maybe you want to do that on your local machine versus the remote desktop session.
Okay.
You can do both. But again, I want to make sure, because people sometimes we're too quick to judge on, okay, it does everything under the sun plus more, let's buy it. And then when you finally unbox it, it's like, well, these 50 things won't work. So if Teams calling is one of your things, you can do it, but it needs to be through a workaround. So you can do it on your local machine, not a problem. That's the session. We'll not do that for you.
We can configure that. So as we mentioned, multi-session, Windows 10. Now, a nice thing on this that we haven't covered yet is the fact that Windows 7 is hitting end of life. And if you move Windows 7 into this virtualized environment, you're going to get the extended security updates at no charge for the next 3 years. And as of Monday, the same day this was released, they came out and they have said that they are going to offer Windows 7 extended support all the way down to small businesses. And we'll be having a blog on that next week that goes into what that actual cost, pricing, and risk is to go through that. It is not cheap to pay for these extended security updates. So if you have line of business apps or any sort of application that really relies on Windows 7 to stay alive, you can move that up into Azure in this virtualized environment and continue to get those security updates for Windows 7.
I would also note here, Sean, that if you have an application that falls into the specific category, you may want to, we may want to work with you to identify why is it that it can't go beyond Windows 7. Is it a version that's released? If so, what's the cost of that version and what does it run on? Reason I say this is this is really putting a band-aid and kicking the ball down the field, 10 yards. It's not an end-all solution.
Absolutely not.
But it is important to say, hey, listen, it gives you, this should be the last freebie you get to plan the upgrade of your app.
Right.
So don't take it as we can still run it with, take it as we are sunsetting the Windows 7 version and we're going to the next one.
Yes, and I'm making a note here to go ahead and put a link in the blog to a previous tech talk we did with Rob Davies from the Azure Data Center Optimization Group that was all around SQL and Windows and to support. There is another option if you have over 150 licenses of Windows. There is the Aperture program where Microsoft will work to make sure that any app you have will run in Windows 10. And I guess they pretty much put it in a wrapper.
Yeah,
and
it's containerization of an app.
There.
But we definitely encourage everybody to not just, take advantage of this, but be aware that, it's pretty much your last lifeline to upgrade.
Yep.
So I can't emphasize it enough. We see this with businesses all the time when project reaches end of life. Like, well, what are we going to do? We have SQL Server 2005. Well,
you're going to get hacked.
It's been time.
That's what you're going. No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. So the other nice thing is, it's free. If you have an F1 license, Microsoft E3, E5, or the academic licenses or an equivalent, if you have Windows 10 Enterprise E3 and E5, you can launch this on that license. And with Windows Server 2012, you do need the CAL for that, right?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
You need a client access license and you need software assurance for the operating system.
Ah, okay.
So there are two modes here that they launched this as: Windows Virtual Desktop, Windows 10, or Windows Virtual Desktop RDS, 2016. Right. So the server build versus the Windows build. What's the difference? Well, there's some apps that just cannot run on a desktop. So you get the same experience. The difference is that the architecture underlying is going to be either Windows 10 client operating system or a server operating system.
Okay.
You can have both.
All right, but now it's not absolutely free. The licensing is free.
For the server stuff, yes, obviously. Microsoft knows that if you're running a server OS to run an application, it means that you're making money out of it. So it's not a bad thing. But
yeah, well, this
isn't
for me to sit at home and watch YouTube videos.
No, it is definitely not.
Right.
If you want to do that, you use Windows Virtual Desktop. If you run SQL Server as a development tool locally, then you use RDS, and that'll cost you a CAL and software assurance.
I use my Android tablet. I use my desktop. So the pricing on this is that you're essentially just paying for the VMs, storage, and networking. And that's where when you get this super powered, like 10 NVIDIA GPU machine, you're paying for it. But it's a supercomputer. If you wanted to have a machine in your home that had 10 NVIDIA T100 GPUs, you're looking at about $15,000
well,
for that.
That's exactly the point here also is now you have the capability of having any computer that you need in home without needing to buy one, right? Any computer is your computer. You can custom build any computer that you want to any technical spec you want and just have it there, or you buy it and use it whenever you want You can have it off so you don't incur consumption charges. You can just incur in storage charges, which are dirt cheap.
And that's the important part. You only pay for what you use. This is not a monthly charge for that VM. It is when it's turned on, when it's turned off, pay by the second or pay by the minute.
You got it. So if you have a graphics guy coming over and building you 4K presentation for the next fire music festival, whatever that they missed so much in marketing. You don't need to buy these super expensive computers, and then when you don't need them, set them off to the side. Let me give you another example. Pixar. They're used to be in the business of just buying a ton of hardware, and then when the movie came out, when they wanted to, do Toy Story 2, well, guess what? That hardware isn't that great anymore. This allows you to keep up to spec. Now, this allows you to, again, provision what you need, when you need it, and then don't use it, and then discard it, and then next time go around, do that. Huge advantage, especially on the economic side, because then how much do you sell that hardware for?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been an ongoing change for probably the last 15 years as the cloud's grown, is that shift from CapEx to OpEx. Yep. And again, we did the tech talk a couple weeks ago, you and I, Miguel, about the reserved instances, and this is eligible for reserved instances. So if you plan it out carefully, if you plan it carefully, you can save up to 72% on what that consumption is going to cost you. But let's go ahead and move into the demo. I'm going to let Miguel go ahead and give the caveat here, because what I'm about to do is how you would set it up if you're just sitting there with Azure. Is this how we do it?
We do not. We don't for quite a large number of reasons. First of all, this is very, very, very customizable. That's great on the consumer world, not so in the enterprise world. Why? Well, we like to be consistent. If we deploy something, we want to deploy it the exact same way for all our customers.
And
if there is a problem with the way we deploy it that exact same way for all our customers, then we have a single fix that would apply to all our customers.
That sounds like change management.
So that falls directly into that, Sean. We have a very aggressive, constrained change management process to deploy this particular technology. Now, when we were actually going through the engineering revisions on it, we went through a lot of them, and we decided that the best way of doing this was just doing a very small footprint, regardless of the size of the deployment, and then do intermediate testing to figure out what the right size of the VM is, so you can not go over, or your build doesn't surprise you at the end of the month.
And that gives you that ability with the reserved instances as well. Very cool. But what I know, this is new technology. I know we want to get under the hood and see how to do it. And honestly, looking at 10 billion lines of PowerShell and C# is not a very fun tech talk. So Windows Virtual Desktop is run right from your Azure portal. And it's pretty easy to get set up. You're just going to go ahead here and create a resource. Go over here into search, and you're just going to search the marketplace here for Windows Virtual Desktop. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to provision this host pool. Now you want to read this. It's just your little service description of what this is. Make sure you're selecting the right one. Right now it is the only one, but I'm sure as it becomes more popular, there's going to be other services out there.
Well, you can see right here underneath it, that's a customized apps for rent LLC Windows 2016 Virtual Desktop. So if I want to publish my image, and then I want to just have that up to the world, and then I want to have independent contractors use my image, I can do so.
And we're going to talk a little bit about image libraries here in a minute. So for now, we're going to go ahead and create it. We're going to give the host pool a name. We're then going to go ahead and select the region, or set the resource group. This is the container that holds everything for the solution. Set the location. Since it's hockey season, let's do Canada. Oh, Paul's going nuts about hockey right now. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and configure the number of VMs. So you've got the usage profile, light, medium, heavy. Did you want to say something about those?
I wouldn't necessarily judge. I wouldn't necessarily say they're pretty prescriptive.
Yeah. Because it really comes down to what the virtual machine is
and what people are doing on it and how often they're doing it. If they're using it to check Outlook and probably just do that sort of thing, then light. Well, And then you have that other user that actually uses dynamic and does the same thing, but you have them on the same desktop. What do? You can have multiple different pools, or you can just do a medium one, and that'll pretty much, all it really does is that the usage profile, it customizes where your user profile disks are going to land.
Okay.
So if you don't need something super fast, not that you don't, well, like everything, you pay for what you get, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a matter of that.
Okay, so then we're going to go ahead, set the virtual machine name prefix. And we're going to go to VM settings. Now, this is beyond the scope of this tech talk. We'll probably have another one in a couple weeks. What we're going to do is we're going to set the URL for the virtual hard drive that you'll create for your image. So just type that in here. In the blog that will be accompanying this, I do have links to Microsoft's documentation about how to set these up. Next, we're going to set the domain user principal name here, the UPN, set an admin password and confirm it. You get the option that you can use managed disks. We're going to leave that alone for now, but let's configure the virtual network. And in this case, let's create a new one. Just default here, VNet01, your address space, that's fine with us. Let's click OK, configure the subnets, and that's fine right there. All right, now it's the setting up the Windows Virtual Desktop tenant information. We're going to go ahead and set the tenant name where this resource pool will be created. We're going to go put in that UPN, again, set another password. These are separate accounts, correct? From what we created back here in the virtual machine. So there's the virtual machine and then what's running on it. All right, now we're going to see that. You can see that you've got your VM UPN as well as your Windows Virtual Desktop UPN.
Before you click on anything else, Sean, I'd like to mention the fact that next to the OK button, there's the download template and parameters. That'll download a zip file. It actually will tell you, you have the ability of recreating this deployment over and over again. So if you're doing this, and I always suggest to our clients they download it and then hit OK. If they don't like it, download it, next one, hit OK. They're eventually going to like one. The one you do like, save. Because then you can just redo that deployment all over again.
Okay, and that comes back to, we did the tech talk in the past when we were talking about the enterprise scaffolding, ARM templates, yeah. All right, in this case though, we're gonna just click OK, it's a demo. And now, of course, the EULA, everything has to have a EULA and TNC. We're just gonna ignore the fact that it wants firstborn and we're gonna create it. Now up here, you've got the deployment in progress. And you'll be able to keep an eye on that in your alerts tab up here. Now that it's completed, the next step is going to be adding groups, apps, and people. That is a clicky nightmare. Now, Miguel's already said we do most of this stuff automated. In this case, the best way to do this is going to be with PowerShell. So we're going to go ahead and do that ourselves. This script will add all the domain users to the Windows Virtual Desktop app group and then create and add users to the remote desktop app groups. So again, in the accompanying blog, we'll have that up tonight. It links to the Microsoft guidance for how to structure this.
Yeah, now this is for this would be a script that we deliver to our client.
Mm-hmm.
For our deployments that we do is a lot more abstract because again, we just deploy to baseline. And then beyond the baseline, we have these applications.
Okay.
So that way we know once we deploy you at baseline, we know that the services are to behave this way. We have this, this, this.
Okay. And do we already have this in Autolib?
We do.
Yep. All right. So what this script is doing is importing the Windows Virtual Desktop PowerShell module, setting your connection profile, logging into the RDS service and setting the RDS tenant to Fabrican. It's verifying the connection, verifying host pools, creating remote app groups, verifying that the groups are created. Then it goes in and creates the remote or adds the remote apps to those app groups. It verifies that the apps were published, imports a CSV of users and adds them to the remote app groups. It adds the users to the desktop app group, adds all those users to remote app group 1, 2, and 3, and then verifies those users are in the group. So you know at the end, it's all finished and it should be configured correctly. And at this point, we have a Windows virtual desktop. And you know, you're sitting here, it's Azure. Well, let's see what it looks like for an end user. So like we mentioned, this can be used from desktops, managed thin clients, and even mobile devices. This is the bring your own device experience. Like I said, I really like that marketing approach. So we're gonna do a mock-up marketing user. And this user, she has a Windows 10 device in S mode, so a Surface or some little cheap laptop, as well as an iPad. So in order to make sure that when she's working with these own devices, her company Fabrican has given her a Windows virtual desktop.
Well, and have in mind, this is their desktop in S mode.
Right. Yep. So this is that
So
laptop
this is what
experience.
she's going to use to connect into the environment.
Right.
For all intents and purposes, all they're doing really is using those as the peripherals.
Yep. So this is her desktop we're seeing right now. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the Fabrican cloud.
And that gets created
Comes
as soon
up here.
as you install the remote desktop client and you log in.
Yep. Very simple to manage. Now you can see here are the managed apps within that. So you can run these apps actually containerized themselves, but you also get the session desktop. And the session desktop is going to prompt us here. Look at that, RDC, used to that. So go ahead, enter credentials.
You can do password, you can do PIN, you can do smart card, you can do Windows Hello, you can do whatever you want.
Actually are not supported on the local client. Yeah, on the thin client it's not.
Oh,
yep.
On the thin client, okay.
Okay. Connecting. Well, there we go. Now, if you've used remote desktops, you're used to this. However, this is the multi-user. It's got all of that Azure functionality in the back, and it's modern. So this one, it's a single VM with 8 virtual CPUs and 32 gigs of RAM. This desktop can actually host 24 users alongside our marketing user here.
Well, CPUs are multi-threaded. They're brand new Intels. And then you also want to take note there at the very, very bottom right there. If you wanted to capture your images with what kind of a image you're running, you can do that.
Well, let's see how many people are in here. Go to Task Manager. There we go. And then we want to click the Users tab. And we can see we have 4 other users along with Alice here. So this multi-user ability was previously only available on Windows servers. Now it's on a desktop. So you can, pretty nice. You really own, this is one virtual machine. Let's close that. All right, so let's go ahead and look at PowerPoint. It's marketing, we live in it. So let's open up this Fabrican sales presentation. So she's just checking this out before she goes up and gives a presentation at a conference or whatever. So go ahead and look at her slides. She makes sure that everything is the same as what she had maybe in her office desktop. So she knows it's up there in Azure. She knows that it's synced and everything's good. So she goes ahead and she gives her presentation. Now, at the end of the presentation, she's talking to a few people. She unplugs this thin client Surface device, closes it, and somebody comes up and says, hey, I've got one more question. What about this? And rather than pulling out her device again and loading up, getting back into the Windows Virtual Desktop, she's going to go ahead and she's going to pull this up in her iPad. From her iPad, she's going to go ahead and access this through Chrome. So since she didn't log out the night before, it already recognizes her. Now you might think that's a security problem, but let's go ahead and where's that session desktop? I'm going to go ahead and we're going to open up a Windows desktop on an iPad here. Opening report, secure, there we go. She has to sign in, so there is still security. She'll go ahead and type that in. Slowly, it's an iPad after all. All right, go ahead and enter it. It's going to connect, make sure that check all of the device health and security settings, and there it is. She's able to come in, view that same PowerPoint presentation in the session desktop. So you can see here you've got the Windows taskbar. This is Windows on an iPad running remotely from a conference floor with really all of the security you would have if it were a fully managed device. And she's doing this through Chrome. So there we have that mobile experience, that managed BYOD experience. But then there's also, for temporary workers, for flexible workforces, there's also the secure managed desktop experience. So in this case, let's see, settings. We're gonna get this set up. So let's find a setting and about your PC. All right, again, you can see here, this is a laptop running Windows 10 Enterprise N in S mode. So N is frequently on the road and was informed by our IT department that a remotes app feed would be added to her account. This feed includes all the apps that are run with a native local-like experience. So this is, we saw those apps under the Fabrican account earlier. This allows her to use her desktop with the company apps, and they're all extended in with that third-party or that security across these third-party apps while she travels. Now, in order to access the feed, she needs to go ahead and install remote apps. I'm gonna go ahead, find a setting for remote apps. So then remote app and desktop connections. Can go ahead and put in the URL that was given by the IT department. Ready to set up the connection. This explains what's going to be happening. It's almost the same as when you enroll a phone into mobile application management. It still maintains, it's still your device. It's just managing that environment. So signs in with their Microsoft credentials. Signs in. And for anybody who's been on any of the security demos, the importance of customizing your login app to avoid phishing and man-in-the-middle attacks. Like you can see here, they've got that as part of this experience. Signs in, it's adding the connection resources. You can see here that it's added these 14 programs and 1 desktop, and those will all be in the start menu now. Now let's go ahead and close out of this. All right, so now, let's see, where is that? Scroll down, there we go. All right, so here are all of the remote apps and desktops. You've got the session desktop here, but these are the sanctioned apps from the IT department. And Miguel, how are these configured? That's all part of that PowerShell script.
They're presented as remote apps.
Yep, okay. So the important thing about this is when she opens an app, let's go ahead and open Outlook. When she opens an app, she's not opening it on her local machine. This is containerized in Azure and maintains or has control maintained from her IT department.
That is correct.
Yep.
This application is actually installed on a machine in that collection of session hosts. And instead of sharing out the session host desktop, you're only sharing out the application. So this application is running on a server in Azure that's just being shared out, and it's using app proxy, reverse app proxy to be able to serve it out.
Yep. So you'll see it here down that it's she's getting a notification that this is a mobile, or not a mobile, but a remote app. We're going to go ahead. It has the same. Go ahead, Miguel.
One of the advantages I was going to let people know out the gate is you can run AutoCAD if you wanted to in this form.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference? It's a very resource demanding application. If you present as a remote app, you can actually run it with the resources on your local machine.
Great. So right now, the icon in the taskbar is really the only indication that this is a remote app. It has all of the native abilities as if it's an app running on a local machine. For example, you can snap the window to the left and go ahead and use the shortcut keys to snap the window. Yep, snap it over to the right using the hotkey, the Windows and the arrow key. So snapping with remote apps works just like any native Windows app. So let's see how it behaves with another app like PowerPoint. Let's see, there's PowerPoint. All right, let's go ahead. We're going to snap that. Let's see. So this is her desktop, but the containerized apps are still running in that Windows virtual desktop. So you aren't limited to just having the desktop environment or the desktop experience. This allows you to containerize those apps so that you don't have to work in the constrained environment, but you still have all of the security, the extra resources, and meanwhile, IT can maintain all of the data and resources safely in the Azure cloud. So there you have. We've seen how to set up a Windows virtual desktop. We've seen how to how that user experience is on a thin client, what it looks like in a mobile device, and then what it looks like in a managed desktop environment with these containerized applications. So that, in a nutshell, is Windows Virtual Desktop. Again, this is only about 4 days old. We've been working with it deeply since it came into public preview. We have rolled this out for a couple of clients already, just on kind of a trial basis. But if you'd like to learn more about how Windows Virtual Desktop can be set up in your organization, we're happy to talk with you. We will have the blog up this evening along with all of those links that I talked about, as well as a full walkthrough guide on how to set up your first host pool, as well as links on how to set up those virtual hard disks or virtual hard drives that you're going to need to get going. Thanks a lot for everybody joining us. Those of you watching on YouTube, the link to the blog is down below. Give us a like and follow. And for those of you that are on the line live right now, we're going to open this up for Q&A. And as always, Tech Talks are a benefit for our MSP and CSP clients here. And at the end, we open this up for full questions. Unfortunately, for those of you watching on YouTube and reading the blog, you'll just have to come along some other time. Thanks a lot and have a great day.